If anyone would like to jump in at any time or has any questions, please just unmute and join on in. I know we have a pretty intimate crowd this morning, and I hope this is just a really casual conversation where I will get to share a little bit about my experience struggling with mental health, working in mental health, supporting those with their mental health. So please just jump in at any time. So it's going to be a little bit about just kind of sharing my experience. We'll see if we can do that. Sharing some resources for those who are struggling themselves, and also for how to support those people. And my hope is just by having these conversations together, we just reduce the shame that comes from struggling with mental illness. And I just wanted to get into kind of my story. So I grew up racing mountain bikes and being really involved in the cycling community. And that was thanks to my parents. So the one photo on the screen there, that's me at age 4, I believe, my first race, the Ganaraska Gear Grinder. And I was always really involved in cycling, particularly when my parents opened Joyride 150, which is an indoor bike park in Markham, Ontario. So the photo in the bottom right there, that's actually from one of our women's weekends. And the experience of watching Joyride grow and that community really got me hooked into the cycling world altogether. So I actually ended up moving out to Whistler. I worked for Crankworks for a while. I ended up doing a lot of traveling, worked for Crankworks in New Zealand, ultimately hit a rock bottom of sorts with my mental health, and kind of shift paths to now working in mental health. So my day-to-day right now looks like me in the top right, where I speak with clients on the phone. I work for a program called Bounce Back
If I
that's
might,
organized by.
if I might
Oh,
jump in here, you have to click on the page again because we are still on the number 2. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Um, so sorry, just to recap some of the photos. So you'll see Mini Rachel, you'll see Joyride Women's Weekend, and then just me right now. I work for Bounce Back, which is a telephone coaching program that's delivering CBT skills, or cognitive behavioral therapy. So I've had quite a journey through a lot of different kind of industries, and I will say somewhat extremes of industries. And since this webinar, this chat is put on by Ontario Cycling, I just wanted to speak a little bit to the role that this sport and lifestyle can play and has played in my mental health, particularly when we're looking at extreme sports or racing, where there is a level of competitiveness and almost an expectation that you are pushing your limits. And that is something that I dealt with as a very young athlete. I stopped racing really when I was 13, 14. So a lot of my competitiveness was really in my preteen years. And I definitely noticed the impact that my young brain had in response to the ways in which I was pushing my body and just the environment of sport and competition. And it wasn't until I was living in Whistler and I was working for Crankworks, and the lifestyle is, it can really swallow you. It's so immersive. Everyone is sharing in the excitement. You're doing activities from morning until night. And it was when I was in Whistler where I kind of first was hospitalized in terms of my mental health, or sought care through the ER. And I remember the doctor had told me that if I wanted to live this lifestyle, I had to live it at 60%. Meaning that if I wanted to do all these things, I couldn't live it at 100%. I would burn out. I would put myself in danger from being too exhausted and doing things outside my capabilities. And that always really stuck with me. Just the notion that we can't do everything. We do have limits. And sometimes there is a lot of merit and kind of rest and balance, which I don't think is particularly highlighted in the world of sport, or even just in the world of social media right now, where you see what everyone's doing at all times. So that was a little piece that the sport really played for me. And ultimately, I think a lot of us are aware of this, but because I wasn't always cognizant of pushing my limits, I did suffer a few injuries. There's a photo on the right. I hope you guys can see that. That was me after I suffered my second concussion in 30 days. And that was just last summer, actually. So we're still learning how to set our limits. But as I get older and as I really prioritize my mental health, I am aware of the impact injuries have just on the time that we're not able to be on our bikes or doing the sports that we love. And then also the impact on our brains. And particularly for me, it was the anxiety when returning to my bike. If anyone is local to the Uxbridge area, this crash was actually on Skin and Bones, which is a pretty infamous trail in this region. And I haven't ridden that trail yet, which I'm sure a lot of people would advocate for going back and doing what you're scared of. But I know for me at my age and the fact that I work every day, the injury is still something that is blocking me from doing certain things. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about concussions, particularly even if we see in the extreme sports of football, right? You definitely notice the impact of CTE or post-concussion syndrome. So just to be really mindful of kind of the holistic experience our bodies go through, engaging in the sport, and just the potential for injury in the sport as well. And Beatrice, who had asked me to do this, she wanted me to touch on kind of common anxiety and depression symptoms. And I do think at this point, a lot of us are pretty aware of what anxiety might look like, might feel like, what depression may look or feel like. Because really, when we're looking at this list of experience, we probably have all felt those things at certain times, and that's okay. That's normal, right? In terms of anxiety, if it's a presentation, a job interview, a race, there is a certain amount of anxiety that is normal and healthy. Similarly with depression, there are hard things that we all go through. Sadness is a normal and welcomed emotion. What I notice, I'm working in my profession and even how practitioners diagnose patients, is looking at the frequency, the severity of the symptoms, and also the impact that it's having on areas of your life. So if you were to ever see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, your GP looking for a referral, they would go through a questionnaire with you. And this is a questionnaire that I use every day in my job, where we are tracking moods and symptoms of the people that we work with. And you're really just looking to see how frequent they experience this. Is it every few days? Is it every day? Is it maybe out of proportion for the stimuli? There's been many days where kind of leaving my house or going to the grocery store seemed like an insurmountable task. That may be more cause for concern than for me getting on a plane to go to a wedding with people I don't know, right? But what we're trying to do with mental health is just to give people the tools, the strategies to cope with all levels of these symptoms, all frequencies. So I really don't think there needs to be a requirement for focusing on your mental health, for seeking care, for going to therapy. I actually advise against waiting for something to happen, but really just to take care of your mental self as much as we take care of our physical self, right? As we're passionate cyclists, we definitely like to move our body, but our mind needs that attention as well. So this was just the common anxiety and depression symptoms. I wanted to speak a little bit to what it looked like for me. And when I'm talking about what it looked like for me, my early 20s was definitely a period of kind of peak mental illness. Of course, it's still something that I monitor and work on now. But at that time, I really had uncontrolled, unhelpful thoughts. I had almost paralyzing fear of the future. Because of this fear, I was quite often obsessively trying to control or plan things to prevent catastrophes. Because of this obsessive control, I had an intense fear of not having control. And when you're living in that fear, you can be distant, you can be irritable. The feeling itself can be paralyzing. And at times, if you feel you don't have control, you may self-harm to feel control. And self-harm is something that's really shifted in terms of the healthcare community of what it's looked at. It definitely can be a way people release pain. Not optimal, not healthy, not recommended, but quite often it is not to end their life. It is truly just to release the pain. But that's what I was looking like and what I was going through when I was dealing with anxiety. In terms of depression, kind of a lot of the opposite. There was a loss of interest, a loss of motivation, purpose, drive, value, all of those things that keep you engaged. So I would say ultimately it looked a lot like withdrawal from my life. It kind of looks like hibernating, you're sleeping more, there's a lack of confidence. You may be doing things that you know aren't necessarily good for you, but you see no point in doing the good things. You don't see the value in that. So those two kind of ways of mental illness showing up for me, the thing with anxiety and depression is they often each other, and that's what can be so hard to deal with them. So this all came to kind of a head for me. It was Whistler 2018, and from that point I ended up really setting aside time to focus on my recovery, or what you would say recovery, healing. Really was just life. And I had accessed a bunch of different supports for myself at this time. And I included some because I know we don't always know what to do when we are struggling or what is even out there. So when I first began prioritizing my mental health and realizing that how I was feeling wasn't sustainable, I had reached out, attended places like CAMH, which is the hospital downtown Toronto, so the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. I was part of the Mood and Anxiety Clinic, which is actually on the Queen West location, and they had referred me to Stella's Place. So Stella's Place, if you see the icon or logo, the photo underneath that of these young hip people in a little cafe. So that's what Stella's Place is. It was a meeting place for people to come. They had day programs, they had counselors on site, and I was introduced to DBT when I was at Stella's Place, which is dialectic behavioral therapy. It's a new version of treatment. So that was an ingredient for me. I also attended the Women's Support Network of York Region, which was in Newmarket, Ontario, and they had specific groups and clinics for those who had experienced sexual abuse. And that was something I was processing at the time as well. So Stella's Place, CAMH, and the Women's Support Network were all free resources for me at the time. So that was really important for me in terms of being able to access and fill my days, because at this point I wasn't working. I had moved home from Whistler and I was not in a place where I could work. So I had a few months of, going to these clinics, going to different meetings, different therapy sessions, trying out different medications. And that was really my focus. So I spoke a little bit about the free programs, and I wanted to highlight some more. So there is Bounce Back, which I mentioned briefly. That's where I work. So I'm going to go a bit into that. But there also are other apps or programs like Mind Beacon, Togetherall, and then Wellness Together Canada. So I would kind of encourage everyone just to even look those things up as free programs in Ontario and Canada. There are options. I think very often we think private therapy is the only route, the most valuable route. But really what I've seen in my time of receiving therapy and giving therapy, it's that it just depends on how much the person wants to work on themselves, how ready they are to work on themselves. That is the biggest significance in terms of healing and how that's going to go. So those were some free programs. With Bounce Back, so Bounce Back is a free skill building program that's put on by the Canadian Mental Health Association. And it's for anyone and everyone 15 plus. It combines self-help resources that are through books or videos, almost like modules. And then with your referral, you have 6 coaching sessions, which are sessions held with someone like me who you would be working with through the duration of the program. So you're matched with a coach. They follow your progress. They're monitoring your symptoms. They check in on you and support you through your participation. And we're really there to guide and support people in making those changes. I think with Bounce Back, the fact that it's free is pretty groundbreaking. And the fact that it empowers people to do the work themselves while also receiving support, I find that that is a good indication for long-lasting growth and progress. The people I work with, they're picking up my phone calls and they're reading by themselves. They're not being forced to sit in a room with a psychologist because their mother, their brother, their partner said they have to. They're doing it because they want to. So I think, just to echo what I said before, it's the person's willingness and openness. That is what can really speak to the success that they can experience. So that's Bounce Back. I've been there for over 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And the Canadian Mental Health Association is a fantastic place to work. I actually got started there volunteering and leading support for depression groups. So I just truly believe in the agency and the good that they're doing. And Bounce Back, I think, is just a vessel for that. So just kind of rounding out some of those free options. I also get asked a lot around finding a therapist and how to even kind of go about that. And even though I work in Bounce Back, I spend a lot of my time looking on Psychology Today, which is a magazine and a website. And there is a tool on the website for finding therapists. You can search through location. So I live in Uxbridge, searching in Uxbridge You can refine that search by the issues that you're wanting to work on. So let's say it's relationships, addiction. If it's OCD, you can refine your search that way. You can refine based on insurance coverage. You can refine based on sliding scale. And then based on that search result, you would have some psychologists or psychotherapists in your area. So a profile would look just like Dr. Hannah Bright's here, where you get a bit of information about them. You would be seeing what they specialize in, potentially even what their office looks like, as well as the fee. So something that I suggest to anyone and everyone who's looking to work with someone is to have a consult call or interview your therapist. You aren't going to click with anyone or everyone, anyone or everyone, and that's okay. When I had returned to therapy recently, I believe I had interviewed about 4 or 5 just to make sure that they were aware of the issues that I wanted to work on. They seemed like they had experience in those issues, and mainly just that we clicked and we got along. I know in encouraging my loved ones to get help, if you're in that position of encouraging someone, I definitely think the interview is a good place to start. It's a good bridge, just to encourage someone that they can have a quick call, see if they click, and go from there. Right? So Psychology Today is a great website to find private support, and you can speak to the therapist directly from the website. Another option, of course, would be to talk to your overseeing practitioner, if that is a family doctor or a nurse practitioner. They often have a network of therapists that they have worked with and that they feel comfortable and competent giving referrals for. So that could be something that, moving forward, you already trust that your GP would give you someone good. So just to express that care. So that is kind of the recommended route, I would say, in terms of finding a private therapist. But I also don't want to discount doing this on your own, or being mindful of the time you spend on your own. Even for me, I talk to my therapist about once a month now. There's still 29, 30 days that I won't be speaking to that therapist, and I'm still living in my body and living with my mind. So I need to be taking steps each and every day. And these photos I chose are combinations of how I take care of my mental self. You also may notice there's a lot of parallels to how we may take care of our physical self. So in terms of movement and staying active, in terms of what we are eating, I will be the first to say that I'm not the best with my diet. I will be attending Anne's webinar or seminar later to learn a little bit more about that. But for me, it's more about alcohol. If I am drinking a few days in a row, typically I notice that I may be more anxious. That's something that I'm cognizant of. Sleep is huge for me. I would say it could be anywhere from like 7 to 10 hours a night that I'm getting, depending on the activities and what I have going on. But I definitely prioritize sleep, and not just sleep, but also rest. That's something that I'm still very much in the throes of practicing rest, and not feeling guilty for that, not feeling like I'm missing out for that. And to process a lot of these thoughts, I journal. And that little photo in the top right, I've actually sent to quite a few clients, because I think it really just shows how journaling works for me. Where there's maybe chaos in your head, chaos around you, and I call it a brain dump, where you put it all on paper, and even just the act of putting pen to paper feels like you're processing something, like you're moving through something. And another big piece of my formula, which was really hard in the last few years of COVID-19, was connection. Feeling connected to others, feeling close to others, feeling safe with others. That's something that I'm still figuring out. But I noticed that it has a huge impact on how I feel, which is who I'm spending time with, and if I feel understood by those people, if I feel safe by those people. So just to be really mindful of who's around you. There was I'm part of meme culture, which is a bit embarrassing, but there was once a meme going around that said, before you diagnose yourself as depressed, just make sure you're not surrounded by assholes. So that's something that makes me giggle a little bit, but I think it's true, right? So much of mental health and mental illness can be our brain chemistry. Absolutely. But there are external factors that absolutely impact our mood and how we feel, right? So if you're doing it on your own, just to get creative and to come up with that formula. So that is what I would suggest for you. I think we're going to transition a little bit around caring for other people, right? So if this is not for you, maybe it's your child, your partner, your friend, and what to look for, right? So a lot of these echo what I had said about my own experience: the withdrawal, the isolation, the avoidance, the lack of emotional regulation, lack of interest in hobbies, and difficulty managing responsibilities. So these, I think, are really big signs of someone struggling. And what you may notice is that they're all pretty negative. You probably wouldn't want to be around this person very much. And I think that's what is so challenging with mental illness, is that if we break our leg or if we fall off our bike and scratch our elbow, people want to care for us. We look vulnerable, and it is easy to love and care for that person. When we're struggling with our mental health, we typically aren't better, sweeter, more inviting versions of ourselves. It's typically the opposite. So I think it can be a really lonely experience when you're struggling, for you and for the people around you. So I just encourage the people I work with, and I've encouraged myself many a time, to be as compassionate as possible, and to take things personally, right? That someone may be struggling and it's not our fault or our responsibility. But there are things that we can do to be there. And I use that phrase of being there and not helping, because we're not always here to help. That's not necessarily our role when someone is struggling with mental health. And another fabulous organization that's based in Toronto is called jack.org. And I got involved with them back in 2018. So there's an image of me, and it was actually a colleague at the time, Maddie, and we led support for depression groups together. And we were approached by jack.org to be a part of this campaign, where the goal was to just educate people on how to be there, how to support those who were struggling. And they came up with these 5 rules. The first, just to say what you see, not to make assumptions, not to try to deduce what you think is going on, just to say exactly what's going on. You're sleeping a lot more, you've missed work for a few days. The second would be to show you care. Again, not helping, not saving, but just that you care. And for me, that looked a lot like just presence, keeping me company when maybe I wasn't up to doing many things exciting, but going for a walk and just being there, hearing them out. So a major kind of golden rule in therapy that I've talked about and that I've been talked to about is that when someone is sharing with you, to ask, do you want me to listen or do you want me to fix it? And that would have saved, my mom and my parents a lot of time, and me and past partners a lot of time, because most often we don't want people to fix it. We just want people to listen. So as part of this be there step, it is just to give them space to talk, not coming up with an action plan. And that really flows into the fourth step, which is knowing your role. So I know sometimes my boundaries get blurry because I do have a bit of education or experience in how to support people's mental health, but it's not my role to help everyone. I don't work for everyone. And being able to direct people to other forms of care or set boundaries to protect even my own, emotional battery is really valid. And then the fifth step would be kind of following that up with outsourcing that care, right? If there's other way to find resources, there's things like jack.org, CMHA, Bounce Back, Mind Beacon, these other programs, to leave it to the professionals in terms of supporting them. So Be There is a fantastic, fantastic resource. And it was quite cool. Recently, they actually partnered with Lady Gaga's foundation, the Born This Way Foundation, where you can get Be There certified. And it is almost like a CPR course or a mental first aid course, mental health first aid course, where you can be certified in how to support others. So the website is a fantastic resource. I know some organizations, some classrooms that are getting Be There certified, and I just think it's fantastic because we struggle with these things, but then how we're treated often can either intensify the pain or it can alleviate that pain. But typically it's just one or the other. And I know for me, I've lived through both options, where how I've been treated as a response to sharing has both burned me and bloomed me or helped me. And I think it's such an important thing as mental health becomes more of a streamlined conversation that we have the tools of how to support other people. So Be There, I would really encourage everyone to take a look at. When it comes to exercise and mental health, I think a lot of us know the benefits. We know those endorphins, we know how it increases our heart rate, we become more confident, maybe we sleep, maybe we are more mindful when we're in the zone, right? When we're on our bike and we're not on the phone, we're not on the computer, we're not making dinner. It is just time for us to be focused on something that brings us joy. And I think if you're on your bike, if you're running, if you're doing yoga, finding time to move your body and carve out time just for you is so important. There is a point around increased heart rate. And when we think about anxiety, one of the symptoms of anxiety is increased heart rate. I've worked with a lot of people actually who went to the ER thinking they were having a heart attack and were told after many tests that it was a panic attack and that maybe they were dealing with anxiety. They never knew this before. They didn't think anxiety was something that they struggled with, but their body was very obviously saying, no, it is. So when we can take back that control and raise our own heart rate, it really helps in terms of anxiety because it's not something that just our body is doing to us. It's something we are choosing to do. So I think that's all quite self-explanatory, and I'm sure this crowd is very aware of those benefits. I think sometimes what can get blurry is just, like how do we do it? Particularly if we're struggling with our mental health, how are we supposed to get out on our bikes when I don't want to leave my bed? How am I supposed to go to a yoga class if I can't look at myself in the mirror? There are a lot of boundaries. And what I encourage the people I work with is to start really small and to pick something that you really like, to focus one day at a time, and to set a goal. And all of those points are kind of pillars in cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of reframing how you look at things, how you work towards things. So just a personal example, I'd mentioned, I grew up racing bikes. My family has a bike park. That's pretty fantastic, pretty rare. I lived in Whistler. What privilege. I came home and I was not active. I did not move a lot. I was in a relationship that was very sedentary. It was a couch relationship. And through the pandemic, I found a YouTube channel called Mad Fit. And she's actually out of Hamilton, Ontario. And she had 5-minute videos, 5-minute workouts. And I started doing those once a day, 5 minutes a day, do this workout. And that was how I started. And doing it consistently gave me some confidence that I could do the goal. I could keep this promise to myself. And where I am now, I had challenged myself to ride a lot of kilometers in the past month, and I did it earlier than I thought I would. So it just shows that you can start really small, but it's about building that confidence and building that trust. The little line there, I use a lot in work. When people are thinking about losing weight or a healthy lifestyle and they want to focus on their diet, or they want to focus on limiting something. And for me, I don't think that's very inspiring to say, what can I take away? What can I remove from my life? I think it's a bit more motivating to think, what can you add? So if we add movement, if we add exercise, if we add dancing, if we add more greens, those are all things that we may want to stick to more than just restricting ice cream, which would be really hard. So that's how exercise started back in my life, to the point where I'm at now, which is a lot of smiling on bikes. But the thing that's really cool with a lot of these photos these are all opportunities that I've kind of done on my own and on my own terms. This wasn't working for Crankworks or doing something with Joyride. It really just started because I wanted to be more present, and I knew on my bike it required me to be more present. I couldn't really be thinking about other things. I needed to be focused. And in a lot of ways, that kind of gave me a bit mushy, but it gave me a bit of my life back, to the point where when I see these pictures, I know it's very authentic, that I was very happy, and that I really love biking. So now I'm biking for me. I'm not racing. If anything, I am just challenging myself to do a lot of fundraising. So right now I am raising money for this event called Mental Health in Motion, which is actually next Sunday. I chose to do it virtually. It's raising money for Mobis, which, if you're in the York region area, it is that RV. It's a youth walk-in clinic. So they do everything from physical health, mental health, sexual health, treatment, all free. And I challenged myself last year to ride 50 kilometers on that day. And this year I challenged myself to ride 500 from May 12th to June 12th. And as of yesterday, I rode 562, I believe. So I hit my target. And it's a fantastic event that got me moving when I didn't want to. So you can sign up online, of course, and do it yourself. It's in Newmarket. It's going to be a great day. But this was my goal as of last year to get me moving, was this fundraiser for youth mental health. So I just kind of wanted to summarize with some mental health commandments for me, kind of if I were to boil down all the work that I've done and all the people I've talked to, these are sort of the things that I think stand out for me in terms of wellness. And the first would be just to get to know yourself, to really know yourself, to know your flaws, to know your strengths and your weaknesses, but to know yourself really intimately, to create time for joy, to be ruthless with how you spend your time, to not strive to be happy, but to be able to regulate your emotions, to find a passion, to invest in the relationship with yourself. So if that's who you choose to be around you, that's how you spend your time, if it's that support that you look for. And in terms of asking for support or help, item 7, to not outsource all of your comfort. So to learn how to self-soothe, learn how to care for yourself as one whole unit. And when you do that, it builds self-trust, right? To proactively rest, to not wait to burn out, to not wait for a crisis, but to do it proactively. And to echo that is just to take small steps consistently. You don't have to climb the mountain today or tomorrow, maybe even this year, but take a few steps every day. And you don't want to feel overwhelmed. You don't want to feel intimidated. You want to feel confident and competent. And those small steps can really build a momentum. So those are things that I am mindful of, I work towards and struggle with, but those are things I think are important. And then I also just wanted to share, and maybe we can send this in an email or put it in a chat, but these are some resources that have just helped me and might be able to help you. There are some books that really range from dealing with trauma to books of poetry to books around therapy, different types of therapy. And then there are also some Instagram accounts I follow that I find just share really valuable nuggets here and there, positivity, insights, and it allows the conversation of mental health to be part of my everyday, as opposed to something that I just have with my therapist or have, in a weak moment or a struggling moment. So those are some resources. And then I just wanted to say thank you. And with that, I'm going to go back to the screen, stop share. And I see some of the emojis. Thank you. So can we see my face now? Maybe. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining in. And if anyone has any questions at all, then I'm here.
I would like to say thank you very much for sharing all those information and the stories. It was great to listen to you in terms of that, because I guess everybody of us is finding some of those spots in their lives. And yeah, so panel is open for some question.
And thanks for having me. Oh. Yes. I'm not sure if Ontario Cycling can organize that, or if you're able to just put maybe your emails in the chat and I can send that directly. Even just a reference.
Okay. if there are no further questions, again, thank you very much for taking your time for sharing all of this. And yeah, hope to see all of you soon, maybe at one of the other panels we have. We got a webinar on nutrition later on. Maybe I will see some of you there as well, or some of the group rides tomorrow. And yeah, right on.
Yes, have a great weekend, everybody. See you soon. Bye.